Hello again, and thank you to everyone, so many of you, for coming along tonight. I'm really very grateful for that. I'm Dave, and I'm one of the founding members of the Keep Our St Helier Hospital, or KOSHH campaign. I don't work in the health service, but I must declare a vested interest. I'm a human being. Therefore, it's only a matter of time until we all need it, right? So I thought it was important that I just spell that out. We've been warning about this for many years now, and as you've now seen this evening, not only do our local NHS bosses want to remove all acute services from Epsom and St Helier hospitals, they've already sold 20% of it. When the press reported on this, they described the property they'd sold as derelict. But the Trustzone 2-year plan refresh document actually says quite clearly, to enable this land to be released, we need to re-provide nursing accommodation, office space, and build a new power facility. We intend to do this in 2018-19, and so as with the Sutton land sale, needs capital funding to do the relocation works before the sale can be delivered. And they called it derelict. So they're having to fork out our money in order to fund the disposal of our assets. So it wasn't surplus, it certainly wasn't derelict. In fact, the Trust are actually going to be spending more of your money to relocate the people and facilities that used to live in those buildings. They've also drawn up plans to demolish and sell a chunk of St Helier Hospital's land and building, as you've seen, for high density housing, possibly as soon as this year or next. But this isn't even about getting the maximum amount of money from these sales. By their own admission, they didn't even sell the plot at Epsom Hospital to the highest bidder. Someone bid, quotes, nearly £40 million, and instead they sold it to Legal & General for £18.5 million. This is not only about running down our NHS and making it smaller, actually it's much, much worse. So locally, what they're up to right now, and we predicted this the day the Hospital Trust published their plan in 2017, this is about divide and rule. They've picked on 2 adjacent hospitals and they've said, well, we can't provide the services in both of those hospitals, even though they have for 70, 80 years. We can't do that anymore. Even though the population's going up, they can't do that anymore. So instead, we'll build you a shiny new facility that doesn't exist indeed, and it will cost a lot of money. And think about that for a moment. At the moment, we've got 2 acute hospitals. If they just provide one smaller acute facility, most people would have further to travel to get to that one. And when you read into the plans, it would have fewer beds, and actually, as you dig into it, it would have fewer consultants as well. Now, so they say, oh, it might end up being built at next to Epsom Hospital. It might end up being built next to St Helier Hospital. Or it might end up right next to the Royal Marsden in Sutton. And of course, what's going to happen? Well, if you live next to Epsom Hospital, of course, you're going to say, well, build it here. And if you live next to St Helier, you're going to say, well, if there's only going to be one, build it here. They are turning us against one another. And in any case, if we accept that, we are accepting the principle that we used to have 2 hospitals, but now we only need less than 1. And that's really not good enough. So it's really about making sure that whatever happens, nobody in the future would ever be able to restore the NHS to its former glory. Because once the land's gone, it's gone for good. So this is about putting the NHS beyond use. Just like a retreating army would scuttle their vehicles to make sure that the enemy can't use them against them, the people currently charged with running our NHS, I might add, are attempting to employ a scorched earth policy. Because once those land and buildings are gone, we won't get them back. They're not making land anymore. And to add insult to injury, you're paying for it. You're paying billions for them to take away what is, I believe, the finest creation of any nation. So, a report was drawn up by the government in 2017 by Robert Naylor, and the report was called the Naylor Report. The plan was endorsed by our Prime Minister and is apparently now being implemented across the country, albeit they don't call it that anymore. But the report urged NHS bosses across the country to identify land and buildings which they could describe as surplus, and to encourage these assets to be sold off, even offering, and this is their words not mine, a 2-for-1 offer, whereby the taxpayer would double the money made by the sale, effectively removing the need to get the market rate for those assets, because the taxpayer, you, will make up the difference. Remember what happened in the Epsom Hospital land sale? They were offered 40 and they accepted less than half than that. Theresa May herself said that implementing the Naylor Report would cost £10 billion. That's £10 billion of your money. I hope you're all feeling flush, because you're paying for this whether you like it or not. And worse, it's taking away your health service. But that isn't where it ends. You might have seen the enormous banner outside Epsom Hospital, and there's another one outside St Helier, boasting that they're in the middle of a £100 million makeover, including, for example, doubling the size of the A&Es at both Epsom and at St Helier hospitals. Some people we speak to when we're out campaigning, or you might have seen us on the street stalls, have told us that they thought that that banner appearing meant, oh, the hospital's safe. No, there's nothing to worry about. Nothing could be further from the truth. To put it another way, what is the very last thing that you would do before you invite the estate agent round to take photos of your house? You give it a lick of paint. But they're not even having to go down to B&Q's and buy that paint. You're all paying for it. And it's not cheap. £100 million to double the size of A&Es that they intend to close within next year. I think it's scandalous. They ought to be ashamed of themselves. So I'd like a little bit of feedback from you on this, and forgive me, it's a little bit like panto. The NHS, as originally founded, was the most efficient health service on the planet. But we are being pushed by the current government, but to be fair, the previous government were no better, towards a system like that in the USA, which is the very least efficient health service in the world. A system which also happens to be one where only those who can afford healthcare can get it, and others, literally, die for lack of care. So, do you want Epsom and St Helier hospitals to both keep their full A&E and full maternity departments?
Yes.
Do you want Epsom and St Helier to keep their children's services?
Yes.
Do you want a health system where we, the people, get the treatment we need when we need it, irrespective of whether or not we can afford to pay for it?
Absolutely.
Do you want to keep Epsom and St Helier Hospital?
Yes.
Do you want to keep your NHS?
Yes.
Then join the fight. Thank you, everybody. A new hospital is not on offer in this plan. Instead, this plan offers the loss of one or both of our existing acute hospitals. We need more hospitals, not fewer. If, like us, you think we need to retain the 2 general acute hospitals we already have, you might like to sign our petition at koshh.org/petition. Let's keep our local acute hospital services. Your life may literally depend upon it. Thanks for watching, and please share this video to let more people know about it.